You might could argue worst case is actually they win like 7 games, but Richardson looks really bad.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Quentin Nelson carries them to all those games on those fullback runs on the goal line.
Welcome in to the Hot Read podcast for Friday, July the 7th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BrawleySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network, and you can follow me on Twitter at Easton Freeze. I'm joined, as always, by producer JT, who you can follow on Twitter at JT_Runke. JT, how you doing?
I'm good. What's going on? I'm back now after seeing Indiana Jones for the long.
This is right. I had forgotten.
What's the review?
What's the review? Let's hear it.
It's perfect movie. Best movie of the year.
The perfect
10 out
film.
Of 10. Peak Indiana Jones. No notes.
Martin Scorsese.
No whatsoever.
This is cinema moment.
Apparently, you were saying that PK Paul Kaharski had very similar things to say as I am right now.
Yeah, he enjoyed it based on his podcast earlier this week on the 440 Podcast Network. Yeah.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge was great, and I totally thought it was setting it up for her to take over the role, which I would have no problem with. I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Have you ever seen, what's the show that she did?
Yeah, I don't even know what she's been in.
Oh, it's a Hulu original. I can't think of it right now, but she was in a show that I really like. That's phenomenal. She was really good. I really enjoyed it. As an Indiana Jones kid growing up, it filled the Indiana Jones sized hole in my my heart.
She was in Fleabag? Okay.
Yes, Fleabag. She created Fleabag. She directed it and starred in it. So I love her work. Awesome person, great director, actor. So
the perfect movie, Indiana Jones.
The perfect movie. I loved it. There's no notes, of course. No, it totally wasn't a bad movie or anything. Like the effects didn't look terrible or anything. No, it's great. I loved it.
Okay. Getting some mixed messages here. Well, we do have the perfect show for you today, as always. We're starting our review of our tour of the AFC South. And today we're starting with the Ponies up in Indianapolis. We're doing the Indianapolis Colts with a fantastic guest. JT, we've been excited about this one all week long. It's Zach Hicks, who, if you follow the Colts tangentially at all online, you're probably familiar with some of his work. At Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter, lead analyst of Colts on Fan Nation and the co-host of the Locked On Colts podcast. Really bright guy. I've been a fan of his work for a while and super jazzed to have him on today. So without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Zach Hicks on the Indianapolis Colts. And today we're starting with the historically Titans' biggest rival in the division. It's the Indianapolis Colts. And we've got a fantastic guest who I'll go ahead and bring on in. It's Zach Hicks. He's the lead analyst over at Colts on Fan Nation at Sports Illustrated and the co-host of Locked On Colts podcast. Zach, we're so excited to have you, man. How are you?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Love Titans fans and everybody with the Titans, obviously. Always good memories talking to Titans fans. And
very civil.
Yeah, very civil.
100%.
I think you guys have the right level of craziness. It's like it's like right around where it should be.
Sure.
You never go too far, but you push that line quite a bit. Your fan base there. It's a very fun fan base. I love it.
They're a fun time. I would say I feel like with fan bases, it's so insular. So folks are like, this is the worst fan base. I feel like most fan bases are all roughly the same. Yeah. Some maybe just more delusional than others. For me, like I can tolerate Colts fans a lot more than I can tolerate like Jaguars fans, for example. Yeah. There's a little bit of like little man syndrome, I think, with teams that don't find a lot of success and suddenly think that they're good. But today we're talking about a Colts team that in some ways kind of in a similar spot to the Titans in the sense that they're looking to be as competitive as possible. It's not a full, they're not tanking by any means, but they're in a kind of a transition period, right? And this year, the Colts are a team that many are maybe down on in terms of whether or not they'll be a playoff contender, or a team that is really all that difficult this year. But they're, for the first time in my opinion, in a couple of years now, the Colts do have a lot going for them at the quarterback position, at least. And of course, in today's NFL, that's the biggest thing. Like, it's, and maybe this has made you just pull your hair out the past couple of years. New quarterback every single year, retreads, old guys. Now you finally are just going with a guy you'd imagine they're going to give the full rookie contract to give him a chance, just see what you've got. Number 4 overall pick. It's funny, Zach, this is a Titans show. Anthony Richardson was my quarterback 1 throughout the draft process. I was a big truther. Like I'm a huge fan of him and what I think he could be, his ceiling. Obviously, this year is going to be a big developmental year for him. But I want to start there, and let's start at the draft. We can kind of make our way chronologically through the offseason. The Colts draft Anthony Richardson at 4. What was your reaction? Was he the guy that you were wanting there?
Oh, yeah. Anthony Richardson was my guy since, I want to say December. Once we knew the Colts, once they made the move to Jeff Saturday, we were like, okay, like that's it for this season.
Burn
like,
it down. Right.
Yeah. Like, okay, cool. They're burning it all down. Like, obviously nothing good is coming from this. Even from that first win, you're like, okay, nothing is good is going to come from the Jeff Saturday move. So we kind of expected to be in that top 3 to 4, 5, 6 range, wherever it was going to be there come draft day. And when I was looking at all these quarterbacks, I loved Bryce Young. I really like CJ Stroud in a lot of aspects. I even really like Will Levis. I was a guy who was higher on Will Levis than most in media, and I had him as a good, solid first round pick type of guy. But Anthony Richardson was the type for me where obviously you have to look at what these guys can do. And I'm sure what you saw when you were having him as your QB1, there's nobody in this class that can do what Anthony Richardson can do. That big arm, the athleticism, the ability within the pocket to not take sacks and just extend plays and create plays. And obviously we're seeing a lot of mobile quarterbacks hit in recent seasons where you kind of want to be on that train. If you're not having a Pat Mahomes or something like that, you want to have the big arm athletic guy to where worst case scenario, you get a Justin Fields season from last year where the passing was just horrendous, but you still get 1,000 yards rushing. You still get that 1,000 yards rushing. So when I looked at all that, and then obviously you dig into who Anthony Richardson is as a person and all that, which it's hard to do from our seats, our couch seats and stuff like that. But when I was really diving into him, I was like, you know what? This is a player where I'm okay with missing on this. I know the completion percentage is not great. I know there are a lot of concerns with his projections to the NFL and developing as a passer
and experience, right? Just not a whole lot of ball.
He's young. He's super young, super young, and very few starts in the college game. It's extremely risky. But I think when you look at everything surrounding him and looking at his talent, looking at his ability and what he can be, and again, the personality I think is really likable as well. Yeah. That's a risk you're worth taking. It's if you get fired for taking that shot, you know what? At least you tried to take that shot. You went for the 3-pointer instead of the contested
process,
layup. Right? Yeah, it's a process. Yeah, exactly.
For me, it was really simple. It was the floor and the ceiling, right? And you, like you mentioned, those flashes you saw on tape, the ceiling was higher than the rest of the class. Like there were certain things he did, and you're like, if that is something that you can refine and make repeatable on a regular basis, that's what you're looking for in the NFL. And then also, like you mentioned, the instant floor of the most athletic quarterback in the history of the NFL already. Like that, just objectively, he is a monster athlete. That alone, even if this year as a passer, he's horrendous, like Justin Fields was last year.
Right.
The floor is so high on the rushing and athletic ability alone. And it's already, I think that people are underestimating what that 1-2 tandem of a healthy Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson in the run game is going to look like, as long as the offensive line continues to be a borderline right around top 10 run blocking unit. That is going to carry them, I think, further than many expect. I want to ask you this before we move on to talking about the rest of the draft class. What this season does a successful year look like in your eyes for Richardson from a developmental standpoint? If he has a season identical to what Fields did last year, and there are some serious question marks in the passing game, but his playmaking ability is really strong, is that something that you look at as a positive or like a win season for him?
You obviously want to see more development than what Justin Fields had as a passer last year, but given again, I'm not saying this Colts team is amazing by any means at all, but you're giving him
it's a better circumstance than what Justin Fields
had.
Yeah.
You're paying 3 Pro Bowl caliber offensive linemen, even though they didn't play like it last year. You're still paying the offensive line quite a bit more than what the Bears had last year. You're bringing in an offensive play caller who had Jalen Hurts playing in the Super Bowl last year. This play caller did phenomenal things with a mobile quarterback. You have a 1,000-yard receiver in Michael Pittman Jr., a really athletic tight end in Jelani Woods, and the top 2 or 3 running back in football in Jonathan Taylor. You're hoping that this is a little bit better than what Justin Fields was able to do last year, just because you have more talent around him. But no, I think if you're doing a projection for fantasy football even, or just for projecting what he's actually going to do on the season, I think you're going to look similarly to, the last 8 to 9 games, whatever, of Lamar Jackson's rookie season when he came in and started. Look at Josh Allen's rookie season, where Josh Allen was like a 52% passer, but still in for around 600 yards or something like that, a really productive season where you could just see the flashes. But I think the most important thing is the player that Anthony Richardson is in week 1. I want to see him look much better in week 17. It doesn't have to be, again, all-pro Josh Allen, all-pro Pat Mahomes level. But if you can see from week 1 to week 17 that this passer is going from, he looks shell-shocked in week 1, 45% passer, fumbles twice, throws a pick or 2, something like that, to where in week 17, even if this team's a 4-win team, he's actually able to complete passes in rhythm. He's able to look comfortable in the offense, and maybe other things are falling apart around him, which that's perfectly fine. They're in a rebuild right now. I just want to see that improvement throughout the year. And I'm calling this entire season a success, even if they win 1 game. I just want to see him get better and better, because 2023 doesn't matter as much. It's more about 2024, 2025, 2026 now with the Colts.
No, I completely agree. Looking at the rest of this draft class, it was one of those things, just sitting on my couch watching the draft. The Colts draft process is so similar to my taste. Like we were talking about this before we were recording. They continue to take guys, the past 2 or 3 years in particular, that were total my guys. And as somebody that covers the Titans, it's very funny because I have to sit here and praise them. People are like, "Oh, you're a Colts fan." It's like, no, I liked the player. If you listen to me before the draft, I like these players, and the Colts just happened to take all of them. JT and I were sitting, we went to the combine this year. We're sitting there at Lucas Oil, and it's the wide receiver drills. And the first guy that catches our eye is Josh Downs. We fell in love with him. From that point, we come home, we do all our tape study on him. We go through our top receivers in the class and all of those things. And he was one of the guys that I was really, really fond of. I thought where you got him was preposterous. The fact that he fell as far as he did, I expect him to be a noticeable impact immediately on this team. I think that along with the fact that he's a good player, he's also, in my opinion, a fantastic complementary fit in that wide receiver room to what you have in Alec Pierce, who I really liked, and Michael Pittman Jr., who I also really liked coming out. Both of those guys do things that are maybe more specialized, and what Downs is going to bring, in my opinion, to the slot as just a versatile, capable player immediately. You got to be pretty excited about that, right?
Well, yeah, he's the first quick win wide receiver they've had since T.Y. Hilton back in 2018. And when I say quick win wide receiver, if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles offense last year under Shane Steichen, when they needed that 3rd and 4 conversion, when they need a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, if they're not going to run the ball, they're gonna isolate Devonta Smith either in the slot in those empty sets, that third inside guy on the strong side or weak 2 side, or you're going to have him backside on a 3-by-1. And you're going to have him run that quick slant. You're going to have him run a whip route. You're going to have him just create that quick separation. And for how much I love Michael Pittman Jr. and how much I love Alec Pierce, they're not true separators. They're not guys who are going to win off the line of scrimmage. Michael Pittman Jr. might be able to beat you with some power off the line. And once Pierce cleans up his footwork, he might be good on those quick slants with his stronger upper body and stuff like that. But when you're looking at a player like Josh Downs, he can actually create that separation, which is huge when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, where, even if the accuracy improves, you still need to get that placement where it needs to go. The placement, that the difference between a 3-yard gain and a 10-yard gain is the ball being where it needs to be on that route, not where the receiver can just make a catch, but where he can actually do something after the catch. So having a player like Downs, where that window of that mistake window basically is so much bigger. Like it closes the mistake window and opens up the ability to create some positive things. That's what a player like Josh Downs does. And getting him for your, early on erratic passing quarterback is going to be really good.
Looking elsewhere in the draft, a pair of cornerbacks who are going to see more action than I think folks expected them to this year. After the suspension by the league and then release by the Colts of Isaiah Rodgers, which I want to ask you about that. First of all, obviously not surprising that the league suspends him for, I guess, indefinitely for at least 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Colts then cutting him, that has to be indicative of their suspicion, or maybe they just know internally he may never play again, or it may be a long, long time, because he really is a talented player. Like, this season, he was poised to make himself a lot of money. That's a real bummer for him. And, actions have consequences. But why did they cut him if not for the fact that they know he's just not going to be available for beyond just this season?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that probably went into that we don't really, that we're not really too privy to. And I don't want to speculate too much. But one way I would kind of speculate I don't want to say too much here, but if he didn't disclose to the team early on or was continued lying to the team, if they ever asked him about something like that, that could just break that line of trust between the player and the team. Again, I'm not saying he did that, but that would be one reason. But the other reason is, like you said, it's an indefinite suspension. It's not even for sure just 1 year. It's an indefinite suspension. And from what we heard, that he was betting on Colts games too, which that's a huge no-no for the league. And we know the league likes to blackball some players. They have their couple guys, for whatever reason, if there's domestic abuse and stuff, you can come back in the league and do all these other things. But if the league wants to blackball you, they will, and it doesn't mean that you have to be like this top tier player or this low level player or anything like that. But basically, they will collude against certain things like that. So if it's a player who did bet on his team's games, and if you bet on his team to lose, which, I mean, if he wanted to win money last year, he would have bet on the Colts to lose. I don't know why he would have bet on them winning.
Yeah.
They should have never suspended if he bet on the Colts winning, because he didn't win any money from this.
It's true.
There's no way. But no, if he was betting on, win projection for the Colts or something like that, I just can't imagine him coming back. I really hope he does. He made a horrible decision, horrible mistake. I've talked to him many times over the years. He's a really good guy, does a lot of community work and a lot of really good things. But like you said, actions have consequences. And a guy who was about to make a ton of money, he was about to double his total career earnings just this season.
Right.
And then fortunate, man.
Yeah, so the pair of cornerbacks that are going to see more action now, obviously Juju Brent's a second-round pick. And then when did they take Darius Rush? 5th round or 6th?
Fifth round.
5th round. Those guys are going to see a lot more action early than folks were expecting. Two guys that I was a fan of. Brent's is like, I thought he was good. He's kind of a vanilla player to me. Like, as a prospect, I was like solid, but nothing that really blows my mind. Darius Rush, I was really high on. I thought getting him in the 5th round was another absolute steal, just in terms of a prototypical cornerback size and build. Not sure you can ask for much else in terms of what Darius Rush brings. I heard you talking about on another interview you did recently, just how much the NFL missed on the Seattle guy Tariq Woolen last year, and thinking that they may have made the same mistake in a guy like Darius Rush, who he converted wide receiver, if I'm not mistaken, right? He's not got a ton of experience at the cornerback position, which makes you think he's not really reached his ceiling as a technician. Athletically, if he can stay healthy, like, to me, he looks like if Caleb Farley was just healthy all the time and had a decent back, like that, like just freak athlete, perfect cornerback build. I think the sky is the limit for this guy. Do you think that he's going to see a lot of action on the field? And what's the excitement about these two young players getting to play more?
Yeah, I will say with Juju Brents, I mean, the projection was that he was going to play quite a bit this season. Obviously, they take him in the second round.
Right.
You're like Dr. Lipschitz here is saying, if I said that right. I hope I said that right.
He's been in our comments forever, and I still make it up. I have no idea.
Yeah. Whatever. He's saying 6'4" with a 7-foot wingspan, and then you factor in the 40-inch vertical, the elite agilities and stuff like that. You know, it's obviously taking a shot on a mold that continually misses in the NFL. You know, again, the Killer Witherspoon types and the Isaiah Oliver and stuff like that. You know, those guys haven't really worked, but personally, I'm a big fan of long, big athletic corners, and you know what? Just keep taking those shots on them. I don't care if they all fail. Like I think one of them's got to hit, and when they do, it's gonna be really good. And I think Brents has a lot of the ability that you're looking for. So I love that pick in the second round. But then Darius Rush being there in round 5, like you said on the other podcast, I was talking about it, where it's like, the NFL is really weird about these former wide receiver converts. They're really weird about them. They just let them fall a lot. And Darius Rush wasn't even like a Tariq Woolen, where I think Tariq Woolen only played corner for 1 season. Darius Rush was a corner, I think, for his last 2.5 to 3 years.
At least 2 years, yeah.
And before that, he was a starter on gunner on the punt team. You look at the film, and obviously, technically, it's not perfect, but you're looking, again, at a 6'2", 6'3" corner that can tackle a little bit. He can turn and run with wide receivers. He can get physical. The technique's not terrible. Like it's not like you're looking at this and being like, oh, he has no clue what he's doing. Like, I was shocked that he fell that far. I actually had him neck and neck with Brents in my pre-draft rankings. I had them both as second round guys.
So did I. Yeah, no, I thought they were both day 2 guys for sure.
Yeah, so I was shocked when Rush was still there. And then when they took him, I was like, okay, cool. At worst, you're getting an elite gunner. At best, you're getting a starting corner. But now it's looking like, you know, it could be a starting corner in year 1 because of the Isaiah Rodgers stuff, which I have heard really great things about him so far in camp. You know, the Colts, they had their rookie mini camp a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about, basically from what I heard, is that he was like the star of it all. He looked like the best rookie there among the defenders. And then that carried over into OTAs before he got a little dinged up and had to sit out. But yeah, he looks like he's the front runner to be the starter this year, which, you know what, when you're going to have a bad season anyway, just get those young kids some playing time. You know,
that's
throw them in the
point,
fire,
right?
Let them
this
play.
Is the perfect season to have to. I think that it truly may end up being a blessing in disguise to get these guys just get their sea legs about them, kind of figure out the NFL, and if they're ready to go as plus starters in year 2 of the Anthony Richardson era, that's kind of all you could ask for. Obviously, you'd prefer to have a known quantity in Isaiah Rodgers around, but I think that there is some silver lining there. We're gonna continue talking about the Colts, but if anybody listening has any questions for Zach, make sure to go over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. You'll find this live stream, and in the comment section of that video, you can send comments, and I'm sure Zach would be happy to try to answer any and all Colts questions you have. The only other guy in this draft that I want to talk about specifically is, of course, Jake Witt. No, I'm kidding. It's I know, although I do know that like you have takes on Jake Witt. Is what I've heard.
Look, man. I don't even need to see the film because obviously I'm not going to find that film.
Tackle out of Michigan, by the way, for the non-sickos.
No, not tackle out of Michigan. Northern Michigan, excuse me. Yes. Sorry. Northern Michigan. We're talking like D2 or D3, whatever that is. D2, I think is what it was. Former basketball player. Look, all you have to do is put that athleticism in front of me, and I'm like, all right, cool. Let's take that shot in rounds. It's round 7.
That's what the Colts said. That's what they said. Athleticism, we will take. Big guy, strong guy.
Oh yeah. If your RAS is under 9.5, the Colts are like, like.
Definitely really the case for Blake Freeland then, right?
Blake Freeland. Pretty much everyone the last like 2 or 3. I mean, look, Jelani Woods, Bernard Ryman last year, Nick Cross, like all super athletes. The Colts love their super athletes. You know what? If you fail, you're at least going to get some good special teamers, So it's like, I like it. I like the process.
No, it's 100%. And it's kind of been the case with the Titans and the Colts. I feel like the past 3 years, they've both been competing to like define the off the bus team in the league. Like who can just be the biggest, strongest, most bully looking team in the world. And the Colts certainly do a good job of that in the draft. The guy that I do want to talk about, and speaking of RAS, holy guacamole, dude, Adetomiwa Adebaware, he falls this was the year of steals for the Colts. The fact that they get this guy who I thought was like a fringe first round guy, definitely did not see him under any circumstances falling out of day 2. He goes in the 4th round, if I'm not mistaken. And from an athletic standpoint, he's got to be one of the best athletes on the team out of the gate. This guy's a monster. There's some, refinement that he needs to do, but do you think he's going to be an impact in year one? And what is the excitement level around him?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see him have an impact. When we're looking at Gus Bradley's defensive front and what he likes to do with his defensive lines, it's very gap shooting. It's a lot of just attack those gaps with multiple athletes. You have Kwity Paye, Dio Dambo, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart. You want these guys just shooting gaps and disrupting plays as much as possible. So now you're getting this guy who runs a 4.49 and super explosive and was really miscast there in college, kind of like what Kwity Paye was a couple years ago. Like Kwity Paye was playing like defensive tackle at Michigan as a 250
out of necessity, basically, just because you are the best athlete on the team. Let's play you here.
Right. Exactly. You're the only one who can defend the run on this entire defense. We're going to put you on the inside. And Ade was kind of like that last year too, where it's like they were putting him at like 5 tech at times. They were moving him down to nose tackle at times, putting him in the wide 9 every now and then. It's like, look, you have a 280-pound guy who runs a 4.4. Get him in that 3 tech. Let him attack downhill and use that explosiveness on those two-way goes against guards. Like they just didn't really put him in the best opportunities there in college, and his numbers and development kind of struggled with that. So I could see why he fell to round 4, but like when you're a team like the Colts where you just want athletes, you just want to get those athletes out there and you just want to tell them to go get it. They signed Taven Bryan this offseason, the perfect guy to learn from, where it's the super athlete, super athletic guy who never really developed in the NFL, but still a solid rotational guy. If Ade is at worst a Taven Bryan type guy, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Took him in round 4, but at best you could have a really good 3 tech, which I love taking shots like that on day 3.
Before we talk about the rest of the roster and this season, I do want to touch briefly on the coaching turnover. I think that this coaching staff, obviously a lot of changes. I like it a lot. I think it's a sneaky, really, really strong coaching staff. I know during the coaching cycle in spring, all the talk was about how this Panthers coaching staff, I'm a big fan. And I mean, to be fair, it looks like a very nice staff they put together. I think that Shane Steichen and the staff that he's built in Indianapolis, it's, in my opinion, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like a kind of a different feel than we've seen from Indianapolis in the past decade or so. He's got, bringing in guys like Jim Bob Cooter from in the division, elite name, obviously, shockingly young. I think I always just profiled him based on his name as like some 50, 60-year-old guy. I found out he's like 39 or something the other day, and that blew my mind out of my skull. He's his pass concepts. I think that the Jaguars are going to regret having him designing pass concepts for the Colts and not for the Jaguars this year is what I'll say about that. But what are your thoughts on the hiring of Shane Steichen, obviously offensive coordinator from Philadelphia? I think a very safe, very forward thinking, modern hire. I don't see any way that you can really think that that's a bad move. I didn't see anybody critique that, especially now that they have Anthony Richardson in the building. Who better to try to mold him into an NFL quarterback than the guy that we just saw mold Jalen Hurts into an NFL quarterback? What are your thoughts on him and his staff?
Yeah, I love the staff. And I will preface this by saying, I said that Anthony Richardson was my guy since December, who I wanted Anthony Richardson to be the Colts quarterback. Well, when they made the move to Jeff Saturday, I was like, okay, I want Shane Steichen to be our head coach. Like, that's my guy, because again, when you're looking at the modern era of football that we're in right now, it is those two-way passers, those passers that can take these defenses that are playing everything's so tight because they have uber athletes on defense right now. Like every team does. And they're sitting back in those Fangio quarters coverages, and they're making you have to be precise and attack down low. Now, having an athletic quarterback like a Jalen Hurts, you're able to just spread those defenses out and attack them in multiple ways underneath and kind of open up the deep ball game yet again. So you're looking again, Anthony Richardson fits that new mold, but which coach fits that new mold as well? That's Shane Steichen. So I love when they went out and got Shane Steichen, especially after a whole offseason of like, oh, they're going to hire Jeff Saturday. They're going to hire every week. They're going to hire
final
Jeff
round,
Saturday.
Baby. Jeff Saturday's in the mix.
Yeah, Jeff. Who was your source on that? Oh, Jeff Saturday. Okay,
Jeff.
cool.
Yeah, 100%.
Jeff was everybody's source on all that, which was that's a whole. We could do a whole show on that. That was insane. But when they got Shane Steichen, very forward-thinking hire, and then I really love what he did with the staff, where it was kind of the inverse of what the Panthers did. The Panthers went after more of these big media type names, guys who have had success in the NFL. Jim Caldwell. We love Jim Caldwell. I love Jim Caldwell. I'm not even saying anything bad about him.
Same deal. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim. But that's, again, it's like a throwback name. It's bringing that experience to work with your potential pocket passer that you're going to be bringing in, which is Bryce Young. The Colts, they kind of built everything for a mobile passer. Which we could have, we could have said from day one, like, oh yeah, it's going to be Anthony Richardson, because they bring in Cam Turner, who worked, who's obviously has a relationship with Norv Turner as his nephew, and worked with what's his face over there in Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury. So so worked with a mobile quarterback. You bring in 2 guys from the Giants staff who work with Daniel Jones and his rushing breakout season. You're bringing over Jim Bob Cooter, who worked with the Eagles in 2020 with Shane Steichen. So you bring in all these young, eager, energetic guys who are ready to work with this new era of football. And then you give them that new era of football quarterback. It's like they were building everything for Anthony Richardson. So the hiring of Shane Steichen, all these guys are bringing in around him, all these hungry young guys. I think it just fits what this team needs right now. And it's kind of just that stark difference from what we got with Frank Reich, where it was kind of, like Frank Reich. I love Frank Reich. His personality, though, was kind of more of that, keep it calm at all times, the pastor buddy, like, and stuff like that, where sometimes you just need the energetic, young guys in there.
Bring some juice. Right.
Yeah. And I think this staff brings juice. It brings innovation. It brings a new era of football to Indy. And also brings, again, more tempered expectations, which are a little easier to steadily grow, rather than we need you to make the playoffs or be a fringe playoff team every year, so we're going to keep giving you some old guys.
Right. We've covered the new additions, so let's talk about the rest of this roster. Let's start from a 10,000 foot perspective on this season for this team. On this show, we like to talk about ranges of outcomes. This time of year, it's a lot of scheduled predictions. This will happen. This won't happen. This team can be a playoff team. This team cannot make it to very black and white, which I think is really silly. And so we like to talk about things on a sliding scale, best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. So in terms of the range of outcomes for this Colts team this year, what do you think best and worst case scenarios are? And then kind of narrowing that down to what you were expecting, maybe the median most likely scenario for this team is in 2023.
Yeah. So, worst case scenario, or I don't, do you even say worst case scenario? Because if they get the number 1 overall pick, then they're getting Marvin Harrison. They're getting Marvin Harrison Jr.
in a 1-year vacuum. But for the Colt, that feels kind of like destiny a little bit. To just bring Marvin Harrison in would be, I'm sure the city of Indianapolis would have no qualms with that.
Right. Can we be upset if they get the first overall pick? They move back 2 spots, so quarterbacks, so people can come up for those quarterbacks. You get a ton of picks like the Bears did, but then you get Marvin Harrison Jr. feeling great. So
you could argue worst case is actually they win 7 games, but Richardson looks really bad.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Quentin Nelson carries them to all those games on those fullback runs on the goal line. That's what what we're looking at there. But no, I think worst case, you could see them being bad enough to be a first overall pick. Super young coach who's never been a head coach before, a quarterback who was not great in college, and we know there's going to be some lumps there. And even if they start Gardner Minshew, this is his 3rd team, and his 2nd time you'd be getting a chance at starting. It's not really someone that you're going to have a ton of confidence with.
For my money, he's the best backup in the league. I think getting him as the backup for Richardson is great. I don't know about play styles matching, but do you think there's any scenario in which they roll with Minshew out of the gate?
They might. I think they want to start Anthony Richardson day one. That's the plan.
Yeah.
The plan is to get him ready to go. But if it's just hey, this first week or second week matchup just doesn't look great, we're not feeling ready for him yet, we want to see him kind of absorb the NFL game from the sideline for a game or 2 and then get him out there. I could see that happening there. So I do think they want to get him out there sooner than later. But you could see a way where this just plummets like they did last year. The team quits on everybody like they did last year, and you have to make some major changes. But I think for looking at peak, again, it's a weird team because last year they were a 4-win team with a corpse of a quarterback back there. But when they had a real head coach in there, they were a below average football team. They were an average to below average football team. Yes, the Titans beat the crap out of them, and so did the Jaguars. But they beat the Super Bowl champs and the Chiefs. They put some good fight in some other games too. I'm not saying they were a playoff team, but they were like a just missed the playoff team, a 7-8 win team.
Fire. There was some competency, right?
Yeah. They still have talent. The Quentin Nelson on the team, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, Shaquille Leonard was out the whole year, but you still have him on the roster.
All the reasons everybody in the media has been high on them the past 2 years, because the talent on paper, it's all there. Right?
Yeah. So you still have the talent. So if Richardson comes in, he's ahead of schedule and has a great season, you could see them being the playoff team in year one. Maybe not winning the division or anything like that, but you could see them being that 6 to 7 seed, or who knows in this division? They could win the division with 9 wins. And
that's what I'm saying. You get to 9 or 10 wins, and it's anybody's ball game. I think.
Right. So I think they have such a wide range of outcomes where they could be the first overall pick. They could be a fringe playoff team that gives a fight in the playoffs. It really comes down to Anthony Richardson. It comes down to this new coaching staff. It comes down to what does this defense look like, especially with how young they are at cornerback. There are a lot of ways this could go wrong or go right for this team. So I think the range of outcomes is crazy with this team, but I think they're going to settle into that like 6, 7, 8 win. Maybe not even 8. 8 seems a little much, but like 6, 7 wins, where like early on it's a struggle. They lose like their first like 6 or 7 games, and then down the stretch they're able to kind of turn it around and win some down the stretch where all of us are saying, no, don't win. We want Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right. They win like 5 of their last 7 games. Richardson starts to,
But then it's worth it if Richardson starts. Look, I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's going to be a superstar in the league. I'm fine with losing out on him if it means Richardson's growing as a passer and becomes the actual franchise guy. Like I will gladly trade.
That is better for the team long term.
You want the quarterback. The quarterback. So I think that's where they're going to settle in around 5, 6. And when Steichen and Richardson start finding their groove later in the season, they start playing a little bit better. I think they'll start winning some games, but I don't expect, too many great things this season for the Colts.
I want to talk about potential breakout candidates, and I'm sure you have at least one, probably a handful of guys in mind that may put themselves on the map this year for the Colts. There's a couple for me that may overlap. The one, speaking of guys that I was really high on and wanted the Titans to draft, and then they ultimately didn't, but they also got another guy that's also very good last year. The Colts go and draft, sticking with the crazy athleticism mold. They go and they add, I'm totally blanking on his name now. The tight end, Johnny Woods. Johnny Woods. Yeah, no, I got Chig's name stuck in my head, and I'm like, what's the other guy? Johnny Woods. They add, who is a monster athlete. He's somebody that I think that the Chig hype train has finally left the station. Like people are talking about Chig Okonkwo in the AFC South as one of the top. It's like Chig and Evan Ingram. Let's talk about those guys. Jelani, he's somebody that. Certainly a big project coming out, right? And that's the reason why he went where he did. We saw flashes from him last year that I was kind of surprised. It felt a little bit ahead of schedule for what I was expecting for him. It wouldn't shock me at all if this year he really kind of puts his name on the map. I don't think it's going to be like some incredible top 5 tight end season, but it might be the year before the year kind of thing for him. And depending on if Richardson is one of those guys that just needs who's a rookie quarterback's best friend, the dump down tight end, baby. If he can be there and they utilize him in that way in the passing game, what do you think about Woods' potential this season? And then other guys on this roster that you think that could really be a breakout candidate? Well,
I'm personally a big fan of 6'7", 260-pound players that can outrun linebackers. I'm a huge fan of that. Guys running the 4.6 and can climb the ladder a little bit too. Yes, the route running's not perfect and the blocking needs some adjustments. But no, with Jelani Woods, they were coming into the year expecting him to be a project. He was their 4th tight end for most of the summer last year.
Okay.
Then Drew Ogletree goes down, their 5th round pick, who was a little bit ahead of him. He goes down with an injury. Mo Cox has a poor season. Kylan Granson kind of settles into his role. That's not really the starting tight end, but more of a backup. And then we saw Jelani Woods get much more playing time down the stretch. And despite the blocking, again, not being perfect, and then Jeff Saturday comes in and wants to go back to 1920s football. So Jelani Woods didn't really have a place in some of those games. But when you saw the flashes, when you saw the Colts had to throw it and they actually threw the ball to him, it was like, oh man, like this could be another one of the, like a top tight end in football. We saw it in the Pittsburgh game late in the game. They threw like 5 straight passes to him. We saw it in one of the Titans games. He nearly had like a 40-yard touchdown. I think he just got tripped up on like the 3-yard line or something and fell short. There's a lot to like about Jelani Woods. And I don't want to get too crazy, but like I really do think he can be like that next like Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews type player, just like Chig is. Like Chig is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I think that they're both rising stars, genuinely.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at what a player can do, what can't Jelani Woods do? You know, as of right now, maybe blocking, but but you want to see, like, if you want to, what you want in like a pass catcher, like he can kind of do it all. So I'm excited to see what he can do this year. I think that's a great breakout candidate. I'd also throw another player from that draft class, and Alec Pierce, in there, because we saw last year when he got his, you know, one chance every week or whatever down the field, he was going up and getting it. Now, some of them, he got the benefit of the ball being 30 yards underthrown. So the defensive back is continually running down the field and it's falling into his lap.
A Colts the past couple of years, the old underthrow ball. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, no, Philip was throwing some.
You're right.
Out there.
It was right after Philip. We got a lot of there's a lot of underthrow. I mean, Carson Wentz was really he was the underthrow merchant for a while.
He was a king at that. The king at that. We love Carson, but Alec Pierce, man, those couple chances where he could go up and get it and win in traffic, you know, against Jalen Watson in the Kansas City Chiefs game, against Benjamin St. Juste in the Washington Commanders game. I think he had one against the Titans as well early in the season, going up and getting it late when they could have won the game because of it. Like they had a chance to win when he made that huge play. And then I think Taylor fumbled on an injury, the next play or something like that. Was just a summary of the season for the Colts.
It really was encapsulating of the season. Yeah,
but you bring in a guy like Richardson where you're going to force teams into single high safety more because you have to bring that safety in the box. You have to have an extra guy in the box because of his running ability. And the one area where Richardson was pretty accurate last year was down the field, throwing the ball down the field and giving his wide receivers chances. I think that bodes really well for a player like Alec Pierce. So I think he's going to have a really solid, productive season. And then just a quick one on defense here. I think EJ Speed is going to have a really good chance at linebacker.
Okay, no, I'm undoing your quick remark because I want to talk about EJ Speed.
Okay.
It was your interview with Marcus Whitman that I referenced earlier that really he was ranting and raving about Speed, and I was like, really? You know, and so I go and I look at some of the film earlier today. Yeah, man. Yeah, where'd that come from? What do you think? I don't know. In the absence of Shaq Leonard last year, Speed and who's the other young guy that got a lot of playing time last year? That was
Zaire Franklin broke the franchise record for tackles in the season.
Yes, so. Those two really impressed me. Not really in relief, like they would have gotten some play, but you know, Speed in particular, his entire rookie contract for the most part, just being crammed down the depth chart, not really getting a chance. He gets that chance. Dude can ball, man. What do you think this is total squirrel detour, but that's where we're at this point in the process. I just want to talk all about the Colts.
Yeah.
What do you think that position? Sorry, the actual question is, what do you think that position group looks like with the return of Leonard after those two really popped?
Yeah, so we'll say with Leonard, like I can't even comment on his availability for this next season because we just don't know. I mean, he had a major he had same surgery twice, you know, to fix a nerve issue in his back.
Is that kind of the message coming out from beat writers and from the Colts? Like, we just don't know, or are they expecting him to?
It's everything right now is like, oh yeah, we like where he's at right now with his recovery.
Right, nothing
like,
specific.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't like that, guys.
Sure.
I heard
that's the deal with Harold Landry right now too. They're like, we love where he's at. We're not going to push it. It's like, okay, so when?
Yeah. So like, we just don't know. Like, he hasn't really touched the field much at all since his second surgery. And the first surgery, again, it didn't go well, which led to the setback in the second surgery. So it's really hard to project any of that and where he's going to be, you know, when it comes to playing football ever again, even. Like, I don't feel comfortable even projecting any of that because it's such a major injury and major surgery. So it's tough, but the benefactor of that is a player like EJ Speed, where he finally got some real playing time last year. You know, he was a quarterback / wide receiver at Tarleton State a couple years ago.
I did not know that. Where is Tarleton? Do you have any idea where Tarleton State is?
I want to say it's Alabama or Louisiana. Alabama, Louisiana.
One
FCS?
Of 50 states.
Or no,
it doesn't
D2.
matter. I'd believe you. I have no idea. Never heard of that place.
D2 down in the South somewhere. He played linebacker his final season. The funniest story about that is when he got drafted by the Colts, NFL Network had no clue what position he played, so they put him at quarterback. And we were like, we took a Tarleton State quarterback.
Tarleton State.
We were like, and then they changed it to wide receiver. And we were like, we took a wide receiver from Tarleton State. And they they put his weight at like 230 or something. We were like, what is this?
That's so funny. That's amazing.
But no, he comes into camp. I mean, he is the skinniest waist on the team. And like, he just, he was a special teamer. He was a special teamer early on. And it was like, we're going to see what he can do. And even last year, they put him in a lot of situations where it's like, we're not really trusting you too much in coverage yet. Like we have Bobby Okereke, who's a really good coverage linebacker. We really like him in coverage. We're not going to force the issue with EJ in coverage yet, but we're going to get him out there in those auto rolls, that the Sam roll basically, and let him attack downhill. And oh my God, when they let him attack downhill, it was so fast, so explosive, so powerful. And by almost every standard, he was one of the best run defending linebackers in the league, alongside Zaire Franklin, who was another phenomenal one in run defense as well. If Shaquille Leonard is not able to play much this season, or whatever happens with that, or even if he does play, Speed's going to get some good playing time. And if he can just develop a little bit as a pass coverage guy, like you're looking at a really good linebacker tandem with him and Zaire Franklin, because Zaire Franklin, he emerged as a pretty good linebacker last year. So, you feel iffy about the group because at the end of the day, it's all about turnovers, and Shaquille Leonard, if anything, gets you turnovers. That's the one thing he's always going to get you no matter what.
Yep.
So the drop off from him to Speed and Franklin is just in that turnover department. But, you could be in a lot worse situation losing your star linebacker the last 2 seasons and having guys like Bobby Okereke last year and then Zaire Franklin, then maybe EJ Speed this year stepping up for him.
Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses on this roster. Let's start on the positive side of the spectrum. What do you think the strongest position group is on this team? I guess both in terms of top end talent and depth. What is going to be the strength of this team this year?
Oh, it's almost certainly defensive tackle. I mean,
right.
I know that sucks to say because you want it to be quarterback or wide receiver or cornerback, where it's like, we're okay at those, I guess, for below average.
It's really the same answer with the Titans, right? It's like, I know the defensive line's going to be good.
Your guys' defensive tackle group too. Oh my gosh,
that's what I'm saying. Like they mirror each other more than folks think. Except we know that we're going to be bad guys. We know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding with you guys. With Vrabel, you can never count the Titans out. But that's the X factor, right?
Yeah. But I mean, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, two of the best defensive tackles in all of football. Grover Stewart has emerged as one of the
Grover
top
Stewart does not get enough love, man. He is like, I'm trying to think of a player similar to him just in capability. Like, he's kind of like shades of Tier Tart to bring home for our audience. Some of the Titans fans would be like, yeah, Tier Tart doesn't get enough love. Grover Stewart's in that same bucket. As a pass rusher, there's some still to be desired, but as a run stuffer, it's hard to get better than that in the league.
Yeah. Career high 70 tackles last year from the one tech position.
That's hard to do, kids.
Yeah, has been one of the best in the league the last couple seasons in terms of run stop percentage and just overall run stops from the defensive tackle position. Phenomenal player. And then obviously DeForest Buckner, really strong defensive tackle as well. But I think outside defensive tackle, again, we're going to go back to old school football. I think running back room is pretty good. You have Jonathan Taylor, but behind him, Zach Moss came in last year, ran for over 300 yards in the last 3 games, probably won some fantasy football championships for some people out there.
If anybody was in deep fantasy playoffs with Zach Moss on their roster, I have so many questions. But I know what you're saying.
Someone gets hurt or,
whatever. You better have picked that guy up. If he was on your roster all year, I don't know how you got there, dude.
If you were somehow playing fantasy in week 17 where he had like 2 rushing touchdowns against the Texans, then there you go. You deserve that win right there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
On the other side of the coin, what is the flashing red light on the dashboard of this roster, either on offensive or defensive or both sides of the ball? Like what are the position groups that you think they still really either need to address soon or are going to look to address maybe before 2024?
I think it's more just the positions with the young guys. Obviously at cornerback and quarterback, you just don't know what they're going to be. And those 2 positions are going to determine how good this team is. If Darius Rush and Juju Brents have strong seasons, the Colts could be a really good defense. But if they play like rookies, they could be a horrendous defense, because we're talking Gus Bradley's system. These corners are left in their thirds coverage quite a bit. That deep third, and then can convert to deep halves and stuff like that. If you're getting beat over the top like Juju Brents was in college at times,
I was going to say, of all the defenses in the league, it's not the most it's not a Kyle Shanahan style. Let's make the good guys look make the bad guys look good style of scheme. Like Gus Bradley's going to hang you out to dry a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's baptized by fire, baby. That's what we're looking at here. We're gonna get these guys into the fire here, but I think that's concerning. Obviously, quarterback, just what's going to happen with Anthony Richardson. You and I are really high on him, and we think he can be really good, but year one could look pretty ugly, and that could determine if they're a 2-win team or a 10-win team. But then the other one aside from that is the offensive line last year was far from perfect. It was not very good for most of the season. They were getting worked quite a bit, and they're kind of running it back with the same group that they had the last 10 games of last season.
Yeah, I want to talk about this because it felt for the first third of the season last year, it felt like they were just shuffling the deck every week. You had guys mixing and matching and a lot of young players. You've got Bernard Raymond, who I liked a lot coming out, but specifically as a project player, they've got him playing early and often this year. If I'm not mistaken, he's going to be the starting left tackle. Is that right? Yep. Again, I think that he's going to be a really good player eventually. I don't know if that's somewhere he's close to yet. The rest of this offensive line, on paper for me, as somebody that's not in the weeds on these guys, it's a concern. Like what are we expecting from this line this year?
Hopefully what they showed a little bit late last season, because late last season they were not great. They were below average still late last year. But at least,
good run blockers. It's just the pass blocking, which again, Titans fans know exactly what that is.
Yeah,
but no.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, I know.
We don't pass in the AFC South. Not a thing. We just run the ball, baby.
No, for sure. But we're getting Bernard Ryman and Will Fries are going to be starting at right guard and left tackle. And obviously you want to see bounce back seasons from Quentin Nelson. You want to see a bounce back from Ryan Kelly and Braden Smith as well. They all kind of had just down seasons, but we were a little concerned here in India. They just didn't add depth really. Like Blake Freeland, we like Blake Freeland obviously, but that's, I guess one way they could go is Braden Smith to right guard and Blake Freeland at right tackle, but then you're starting 2 young tackles. And you guys know what that's like.
Great way to not be good in a hurry.
Right. You'd rather have an average tackle and a below average guard than have a above average guard and a below average tackle. We know that. We know that. We
do
don't
know
want
that.
bad tackles.
Little Dennis Daly flashback for Titans.
Yeah.
Or
Eric Fisher for us.
Eric Fisher with
Matt Pryor Matt Pryor, Jamarcus Webb, if we want to even go more in the weeds here and stuff like that. But that's one way to go. But I think they kind of I think what they're hoping is what they saw late last season, where the offensive line was wonderfully below average late in the year, which we loved late in the year. They were below average because the first half of the season, they were atrocious. I mean, it was the worst offensive line in football. And it's like, we're paying these guys like $80 million to be the worst offensive line in football. But when they put Will Fries and Bernard Ryman in there, they did get better each week and they started showing some chemistry. I think the hope is just getting a new staff and a new system and a new O-line coach in there that can get the fire back in those top paid guys and see a good jump from the young guys. A guy like Bernard Ryman is already up, I think 20 pounds is what they were talking about at left tackle, and 20 pounds of muscle too. Like they were showing pictures of him. He looked pretty filled out, which
is important because he didn't play football at all really in his life until high school, right? If I'm not mistaken, like he was a late addition to the football world. And then was he always a lineman or did he play tight end? Yeah, okay. I thought he was a tight end convert. Yeah,
260-pound tight end and had to convert to left tackle. And I think his last season at Central Michigan, he played at like 290 at left tackle.
So what are they expecting him to play at this year? Like 320, 310?
I think they have him at like 320 right now.
Okay.
Whatever is what they were kind of saying. He added like 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. So
that's big.
We're excited there. Will Fries, I think there were a lot of good things in moments, but if he can just be below average, if that's your one poor player on the offensive line, you can live with that at being at right guard. We had it with Mark Lewinsky and stuff like that before. So, I don't think it's the end of the world that they're rolling back that offensive line. It's just, I wish there were more competition. I wish there were just another veteran or two in there just to be like, all right, like let's just feel more comfortable if one of these guys isn't it, for
some fail safes, right?
Yeah, which they didn't have last year. Their fail safes were Ryman and Fries, who were young guys who weren't ready, and they kind of had to work through their growing pains from week 8 when they became starters up until the last 4 weeks when they actually looked like starting offensive linemen.
it certainly seems like the offensive line to further draw parallels to the Titans. Both teams, I feel like the offensive lines maybe have the most to prove on the team. If I told you this offensive line really disappointed this year, who is the weak point who's the guy you're most concerned about?
Well, honestly, the most concern would be the three guys that they paid big money to.
Sure.
Because again, Bernard Ryman, you need solid play out of him because left tackle is just that vital. Like you just cannot have a below average left tackle in today's NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, when they lost the when they lost the Super Bowl, they went out and they got, skill players across their offensive line and obviously at left tackle and stuff like that. It's so important to have at least a solid player at left tackle.
Y'all gotta quit making us laugh in the comments. We're trying to do a job here. All right,
guys, we're doing a job. But no, it would be the really highly paid guys though, because unlike the Titans, you guys aren't paying your offensive line $60 to $70 million this next season.
Right.
You got Quentin Nelson making $20 million a year. You got Braden Smith making near $20 million a year. You got Ryan Kelly making, I think, like $13 million a year. Like these guys need to step up. Those
guys have to work for the other question marks. Right.
Exactly. Like I can live with Will Fries failing. I could live with Bernard Ryman failing. It's a 3rd round pick and a 7th round pick with those guys. Like I can live with that. I can't live with the $20 million a year right tackle failing, or the $14 million center failing, or the left guard that you're paying to be a generational Hall of Fame player playing at a Pro Bowl level. Like it's fine. Pro Bowl level's fine, but like you're getting paid quarterback money. You need to be a Hall of Fame caliber guard
100%
at all times. Like you can't be getting thrown into your quarterback's lap by Dexter Lawrence, great player. You can't be getting tossed aside. Like you can't have Tyler Tart, for how great he is, great player. I love.
You should still be winning that at that price point. You should be winning that competition. Yeah,
exactly. So that's the thing, that these three highly paid guys just need to bounce back. They need to get back to where they were, and again, hopefully having this offensive line coach who's like 40 years old, who's a big time yeller and in their face, like young guy like them, like hopefully he can kind of get that spark back in them that the 60-something-year-old Chris Strasser kind of let go aside there last season.
Zach, we've been so appreciative of your time. One last question before we let you go. And for anybody that's watching and listening, last call for any questions you might have for Zach about the Colts. Go over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, leave your comments on this live video, and that's where we'll be able to see any questions you have. Let's finish with the wide receiver room and a comment that was made earlier by Logan Grady, just talking about how he feels that the Colts still need a number 1 wide receiver, and he fears that they're going to pay Pittman like that. We don't have to talk about the contract implications of that, but I do want to talk about this wide receiver room. I think it's well-rounded, as we talked about earlier, with Downs and Pittman and Pierce as your top 3 guys, but there is some concern there over, is there a real alpha in that room? Do you see Pittman taking that step and being that true wide receiver 1, or do you think that they maybe are still wanting in that category?
I think the Colts view Pittman a little bit higher than I do. I think they'd be more likely to extend Pittman right now than I would. I would personally wait until after this season, because
I'm with you on that.
I've seen enough these last 2 seasons to say that Michael Pittman Jr. is a good wide receiver. He is a good wide receiver.
Yes, he is.
1,000 yards average the last 2 years, nearly 90 catches average the last 2 years, with Carson Wentz, the corpse of Matt Ryan, the corpse of Nick Foles, and Sam Ehlinger is probably the best of the bunch. In all of those guys.
Yeah.
Like I feel comfortable saying that Michael Pittman Jr. did some good things in these last 2 seasons, but it's like he's right there. It's like he's so close.
Yes. He's a bona fide good wide receiver too.
Yeah.
I think you could put him in as the second guy anywhere and he would excel. I think he's like Corey Davis was with AJ Brown here. It's like, you're going to plug that in and they're going to probably overperform. But can he take that next step? Is he I'm with you there. Like I'm not sure what does he need to do in your opinion to prove to you that like, this is the guy, he can be a 1.
I don't know, because like 2021, from what we could see from most of that season, was like, this is a wide receiver.
Yes.
I mean, he was winning down the field. He was winning short. He was winning over the middle, winning outside. Like there was a lot of great things, but then there were certain games and moments where the drops would come in, where he would just get out jumped by a guy down the field. Like late in the season, he would run out of steam. And it's like, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I want you to be that wide receiver. What? So I think it's a tougher decision than the AJ Brown one was, where AJ Brown, the Titans should have extended.
You don't say.
Yeah.
You don't say.
Yeah, revisionist history maybe, but I feel like even at the time we could have said
I don't think it is. I don't really think it is. No, Titans fans certainly don't think it is. I'll tell you that much.
I'm with you. But I think it's a tougher decision than that, because it could go either way. He could be the next AJ Brown. He could be the next Kenny Golladay when you pay him. Where does he go with this?
Pretty wide spectrum there.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like the bigger wide receiver that's shown some good things, but like it could go either way with him. I personally think the Colts are going to extend him, and I think that they're hoping for some good play. And luckily, when you have a rookie quarterback contract as your starter, you can afford to make more mistakes if this ends up being a mistake. And obviously, if it ends up being good, then you have a wide receiver one for your young quarterback, and that can still do some good things. So, yeah, I'm torn on it when it comes to paying Pittman. But talking about the rest of the wide receiver room, it's a very adequate wide receiver room. You have your guy in Michael Pittman Jr., your hopefully is the guy. You have your deep threat in Alec Pierce. You have your quick separator, your quick winner in Josh Downs. And then you have some nice shots behind that. You have Isaiah McKenzie, who did some good things in Buffalo. You have Brashad Perriman, who's had some good moments in his career. You have Ashton Dulin, who, when he gets on offense, he makes some things happen. But at worst, he's a really great gunner, was an all-pro a couple seasons ago as well. So yeah, I think it's a solid wide receiver room. You obviously want someone to emerge, and you want it to creep up into that top 10 range by the end of the year. But if it ends up being what it is right now, where it's just an adequate wide receiver room, that's doable. You can live with it. But you need your star running back to.
About to say.
Yeah, you need to get explosive plays. Somewhere.
Richardson to hit. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Zach, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Guys, go check out his work. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks 2. You can follow him on Threads at Unavailable Image. I saw you posted that yesterday. Yeah. You can check out his work over as the lead analyst at Colts on Fan Nation, the Sports Illustrated site. And then he's the co-host of the Locked on Colts podcast. Zach, what in particular are you working on right now? Is there anything you want to plug?
Oh man, I'm working on some sleep. I'm working on, just
with you there. Yep.
Trying to figure out some content for this off season and stuff. We're trying to do some fun things over at Locked on Colts. We're still doing that 3 times a week right now in the off season. So trying our best to figure out some things to do, but you guys follow over there. When it comes to written stuff, just trying to find some things that you guys will actually read. Again,
sure.
The toughest time of year.
Yep.
But some fun film stuff, obviously, and all that. And yeah, Logan here is saying in the comments section that I look like Dak Prescott. I think
that's what I've heard. Yeah, I think it's the stubble, because I don't know if you're aware. Dak Prescott he's African American, and Zach Hicks is not. So that's a minor difference, I'm afraid. But the rest, I can see the resemblance. I think I'm
not sure if you heard.
That's a compliment, I think. Dak's he's a handsome looking guy. So
he's very attractive. Logan, thanks, buddy. That's a very attractive dude. It's comparing me to Dak Prescott. That's awesome. Especially the shaved head and I see it. It's the
yeah. I'm racist for pointing out that they are in fact different races. All right. Well, ending on that very weird note, Zach, thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it. We'll have you on the show another time, maybe.
No, yeah. Awesome. For sure. Definitely.
Fantastic. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody listening. Thanks so much. We'll be back first thing Monday morning talking about who knows what. Like Zach said, it's the offseason. We kind of make it up as we go. Until then, for producer JT and for our special guest, Zach Hicks, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.